Hi everyone, it's Elaine Hamilton from the Reiki Center, and this has been kind of playing on my mind for a little while. I wanted to do a little update 1 year on, 2021, and it was kind of around this time that I personally started talking a lot about the new energy that was coming in, the new timeline, and almost like the idea of COVID being a precursor to the kind of shifts and changes that we're now seeing all over the world. And I just kind of felt it was a nice time to maybe reflect and kind of, I don't know, have a bit of a download in terms of how it's all unfolding. Because one of the things that I've noticed, certainly within myself and my community, is this level of exhaustion and resistance that is really starting to take a toll on us, not only mentally in terms of mental health, but also emotionally. Just the levels of anxiety, the levels of grief actually coming up, and just our inability to kind of see friends and family and get together and travel. And for many of us, we have extended families in different countries, and so it can be very tough, right? And then within our community, within our Reiki community, there's a lot of people being affected by the terrible outburst that is now happening in India. And, there's just a lot of tragedy, and there's a lot of difficulty all around us. And even if you're not being particularly personally affected, like perhaps you don't know anybody that's been really taken very ill with COVID, just the lockdowns and the amount of energy we have to expend on the wearing of the masks and the making sure we follow the rules and just the day-to-day activities, and how difficult all that is as well. So it's kind of like 1 year on, right? And the level of difficulty, I think for most of us, we wouldn't have thought that we would still be in the thick of it. And actually, for many of us, it is much worse. And worsening. So there's almost like, okay, we've been in it for a year. It looks like, honestly, at least another year. And it just feels very, very long. And it feels like the energy just isn't letting up. So forget about the actual physical challenges that COVID is bringing. Let's also talk about the energetic side of things. So every other day somebody's posting on my Facebook feed anyway, Schumann reports, the resonance is massive, or it's just white. So the whole graph is just white, which if you haven't ever seen the Schumann resonance, it basically means it's off the charts. And it's been like this consistently for many, many months. So there's just this constant bombardment of very intense energy. And this is really what I kind of wanted to talk about in terms of this movement into the Schumann resonance and just the level, the new timeline energy, it being here and it's not going anywhere. So basically we are in the thick of it. And not only are we in the thick of it, but we are actually in it to stay. And I think that this is something that is very much the next stage. So it was almost like 1 year ago, we were talking about the beginning of the new energy coming in, the new earth energy. It was kind of exciting. It was kind of like, ooh, it's really interesting what's going to happen. And 1 year on, it's almost like, oh my God, it really is here. It's almost like the reality is hitting us now, that not only is it here, but it's staying around. And that staying around is really probably not what we'd hoped for. I know certainly in my new agey circles, the way we talked about it was like this wonderful, blissful, elevating kind of momentum of energy, and we'd all be dancing around with flowing dresses and tiaras in our hair. And instead, it literally feels like a freaking shit show. Excuse my French, but it's like, oh my God. So it's not quite the energy new earth timeline that I think, for me, if I'm totally honest, I was kind of in the back of my mind hoping for the floral flowy dress tiara thing, though if I was really brutally honest with myself, I was kind of expecting it to get very, very challenging before it got better. And this is actually what we're now experiencing. So the idea that we have shifted, so that is one thing. You either take that on board or not. There's a lot of us that are taking this very seriously now, and we are working at the kind of at the edge of really looking at the energy, what it means, and the acceptance of it. So let's say that this new timeline truly is here, and it's here to stay, and the intensity of the energy and the difficulty and the challenge, actually the difficulty and the suffering lie in the trying to hold on to the fantasy that things are going to get back to normal. And if we really sit in the reality of this moment, in other words, that things are extremely difficult, that there is this tide of movement, and also this tide of not knowing, right? Like we are totally in the not knowing, and the suffering, the discomfort, and the difficulty is actually not in the not knowing. It's actually in the not wanting to be in the not knowing. And so it's the resistance to that. And if you look at all your difficulty, it is in the resistance to what is actually happening, right? It's not actually in the happening itself. Although for many of you, I appreciate you are losing loved ones, and there is a lot of suffering happening, and there's a lot of tragedy happening. And I'm not in any way discounting that. But I'm just saying that if you really come into your own grief and your own emotions, are the emotions and the grief and the unknowing what is truly the difficulty? Or is it the difficulty of really moving into and accepting those unpleasant emotional states? And really it's this ongoing willingness to sit with the challenges and not have the inclination to move away or wish it away or want it away, or why isn't it away? Why is it like this? And it was interesting because I caught myself doing it this morning. And so, I'm just sharing in terms of my own understanding of what's happening as well. So I woke up this morning, I'd had a very difficult dream, and I woke up very upset by this dream. And then as I was journaling, I was like, I wake up and I feel awful, and I feel awful. When is this emotion going to go away? And it was so funny because as I was writing it, I was like, okay, there it is, right? When is this going to go away? And in that resistance of that emotion, in that resistance of that difficult moment, lay my suffering. And this is where we are now. And we can't escape it, right? It's like, it's difficult. And there are going to be days when you wake up and the Schumann resonance has gone off and you're being hit by left, right, and center emotional energy as well from humanity. So there are so many different layers going on at the moment that are incredibly challenging. And this is where the rubber hits the road, right? Now, for those of you who have been on the spiritual path for a long time, this is where we are. Like, this is where we put all of the practice into an actual everyday moment by moment choice. Like, am I present with what's happening? Am I present with my emotions? Am I present with the energy as it is right here in this reality? Or am I still in my head wishing that the old normal was back, wishing I could travel, wishing I could see family, wishing I could this. All of that wishing, projection into the future, is what is creating more suffering than is necessary. And it's also old timeline, which means you've also got your foot still in the old timeline that is dissolving. As I speak, it's dissolving and will continue to dissolve. Or are you spending more and more time in the new timeline, the new energy, and really being present to this moment? Now, when you take time to be really present in this moment, I'm not saying it's all roses and florals and tiaras, okay? But I am saying that that's where the reality really is. And there is a huge amount of support waiting. Like, it's right there. And that support is in the form of a deep and very tangible feeling of love, of gratitude, of movement, and I think probably most importantly for many of us, this feeling of okayness. It's okay. Everything is okay. And it's quite difficult. It's impossible to feel that when you've still got your both feet in the old timeline and you're thinking, when is all this going to be over? Like, if you're taking that line, when is it all going to be over? And you're constantly thinking about that, there is no peace there at all, because that inability to really step into the unknown and the unknowing is going to hold you in a very, very resistant position, and that's going to get really, really painful. It's probably already very, very painful, and it's just going to continue that tension. And for many of us, we're just exhausted, and we're exhausted because we're trying to hold that position. So I think, if anything, if I give you anything with this update 1 year on, it's to continue to let go of your resistance, like continue to work on being present, and really continue to try and question things as they come up. You know, what is it that I'm wanting to not have happen right now? You know, what emotion am I trying to get rid of? What incident, what situation am I trying to not have happen, right? And just really start to pay attention to where you're not moving and surrendered and in the moment, and just watching where you're trying to grasp, wish things were different to how they are exactly in this moment. And I know that, you know, when I'm talking, it's no different from what anybody's been saying for millennia in terms of be present, be present, be present. But I don't think as humanity, certainly not in my lifetime, I don't think there's ever been a calling to put this into practice quite as starkly, like quite as in my face as it is right here, right now, and has been for the last year, and will continue to be in the coming months and probably years, honestly. So it's really coming into that acknowledgement of that. Like, this is where we practice what we preach for many of us, because we are teachers and light workers and healers, but also for many of us as students of Reiki, students of the healing arts. It's like, this is where the practice really happens, right? In our real life, in our every moment, in our every emotion that comes up. Are we moving with it, or are we trying to move away from it? And just that acknowledgement, and just starting to practice that higher awareness of, where am I? Am I in the present moment, or am I just scattered? Will really help you in the coming months. It will help maintain your energy, and it will also keep you connected to this new energy that actually has a really beautiful texture of compassion and love completely interwoven into it. I mean, it is actually, when you tap into it, it is a very, very powerful force. So anyway, I hope that helps. And if you'd like to join us, I mean, every Thursday we meet in the container, in the community. And the reason we do that really is to remind ourselves. We travel together, sit in the new timeline for the half an hour, and just really kind of be within that energy so that we are reminding ourselves of where we're going. And I have to say that for myself, it's an absolute lifesaver, because it allows me to remind myself that there is this overriding sense of okayness that is in the energy system all around us, even though on the surface it looks so incredibly difficult. So wishing you well and lots of love, and thank you for listening.